Hey guys, welcome to my kitchen. You are in my kitchen today because I'm going to teach you guys about states of matter and how those states can change if you add or remove heat. The three states of matter are solids, liquids, and gases, and I'm going to use the particle theory to explain the properties of these three states. The particle theory states that everything in this world is made of particles that are constantly in motion. And so I'm going to start by explaining the properties of solids and liquids and gases. Now, a solid would look like this. As you can see, these yellow particles are tightly packed together. They cannot move freely, only slightly vibrating against each other. This results in a stable shape, a stable mass, and a stable volume. The solid will only change shape if forced, so if you break it or if you smash it. Some examples of a solid would be pen, banana, kettle. I'm sure you can think of loads of different examples of solids. Our next state of matter is a liquid. And liquids have a definite volume and a definite mass, but they do not have a definite shape. So you can see here the particles in this liquid, they are still close together like a solid, but they have a little bit more energy to move around, and they take the shape from their container. Some examples of liquids would be water, soy milk, rum. These are all liquids. And you can see that the liquid in here, this lovely spiced rum, is moving around freely in its container. And so if we had some water, see here that it has a stable mass, it has a stable volume. But if you pour it into a different vessel, still the same volume, still the same mass, but the shape has changed to fit this new container. Our final state that we are going to look at is a gas, of course. And so you can see here in this diagram that the green particles are very, very spread out. They have a lot of energy, and you can see this with the little arrows as well. The arrows are showing that the particles are moving all around. Gases have a definite mass, but they do not have a definite shape or a definite volume. They will spread out and fill the container that they are in. And of course, like I just said, the particles have got lots of energy. Examples of gases would be the oxygen that you breathe in from the air, carbon dioxide that you breathe out of the air, and farts are an example of a gas. Okay, so now what we are going to do is I'm going to show you guys how these states of matter can actually change depending on whether you add or take heat away from the particles. So what you're going to need is a pot, you're going to need a stove, and you're going to need some ice. Now we already know that ice is the frozen form of water, and it is a solid. The particles in ice are held together very, very tightly. They're very stable. They're only moving ever so slightly. But what we can do is we can actually change this ice into a different state. And we can do this by adding heat. So what I'm doing is I'm adding the ice to my pot. I'm turning on my element. I'm going to put it quite hot so this happens quickly. And I can already see the ice starting to melt into a liquid. Not sure if you can see that this is pretty liquidy now, but we can still see some solid ice. So I'm just going to melt it fully for you. So now you can see that pretty much all of that ice, that solid water, has melted into the liquid form of water, the one that you'd be more familiar with. And the reason why that has happened is because we've given those particles in that solid more energy. And by giving them more energy, they've started to move around a bit more, and all of a sudden they hit their melting point where they turn into a liquid. What is now going to happen, because I'm still adding more heat, is the liquid is going to turn into a gas. And you can probably see that if you look in the bottom corner of the screen. And so what's happening here is we're giving the particles in that liquid so much energy that what they start to do is they start to spread away from each other. Now, on the other hand, if I were to put a lid on here, and if I went away for a couple of hours, the pot would have cooled down, and what we would actually start to see is condensation, and that is where a gas turns into a liquid. So it's the opposite of a liquid turning into a gas. And the reason why that happens is because you've cooled the gas down. The particles don't have so much energy anymore, and what they do is they revert into their liquid form. When they are a liquid, what you can do is you can take even more heat away. You can chuck them in the freezer, and what those water particles are going to do is they're going to form a solid structure, which we know as ice. So hopefully you enjoyed hanging out in my kitchen with me. Today I taught you about 3 states of matter: solids, liquids, and gases, and I taught you about how those states can actually change depending whether you add or take away heat.